Go.
Welcome to Frame This Podcast. We are here with Tori Jackson. She is a ceramics artist, a clay thrower, if you will. I'm here with my recording partner and more technically savvy friend, Philippe.
Hey.
Tori, would you mind introducing yourself for our audience and giving us a more well-informed description of what it is that you do?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Tori. I am not super specific about terminology, so I could be a clay thrower, potter, ceramicist, what have you. I teach beginners level ceramic wheel throwing classes. I also work with some local coffee companies occasionally. I live in Gordonsville, Virginia, and I'm currently in grad school for visual art.
Heck yeah.
Is that online now due to our current... You can't really call it a political climate, but our current viral.
It's a health crisis that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a pandemic.
Correct. It was actually always distance learning. So once a semester, I would travel to Vermont to have like a really intense 10-day residency. And then the rest of the semester, you're at home linked with a couple local artists. So it's actually nothing has changed for me since I started in January.
And do you want to give a shout out to that program that you study with or anything?
Sure. Yeah, that's Vermont College of Fine Arts, UCFA, in Montpelier, Vermont. It's a really awesome program. It's visual art, so there are all sorts of artists there and a handful of clay people as well. Is
remote normal for that sort of thing, or is it for that school in particular?
Yeah, it's actually normal. It's how they usually run the visual art and a couple other of their MFA programs.
Fascinating.
It's a really good setup. It's, I think, meant so you can kind of like continue your home life, and some people continue their work life while getting their degree at the same time.
Yeah, that's really cool. So how do you balance teaching with learning?
It's pretty difficult. Yeah, I don't have many days off. It is a 30 credit hour program on a couple of jobs that I have. So it's basically like when I can fit everything in, I fit it in.
That's amazing. Well,
so do you teach at local schools, and then on top of that, you report back to whoever your professor is at the MFA?
I teach at a local studio in Waynesboro, Virginia. Actually, it's just a clay studio. So I teach mainly adult classes, some youth classes on the wheel. It's still in person. We just opened back up recently. So it's 4 people surrounded by a shower curtain in their own little wheel space.
That's interesting. It's really cool. Well, I just want to say thank you for the job you're doing being an educator right now. During this pandemic and the crisis. I know a lot of teachers. I work for the school system up in Fairfax, and I know how hard it can be in times, and I just want to share my gratitude with you, and thank you for your work.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's definitely a learning experience for sure. It's different.
When did you know that you wanted to teach versus just do full-time production?
Yeah, I think the teaching came first actually before the art. So in high school, when it came time to kind of figure out what you think you might want to do 10 years from then, I had really good teachers, really solid examples, and I knew I wanted to teach. So I was just starting to look for education programs and came across JMU in Virginia, James Madison University.
Yeah.
And
that's where he
they
went.
had,
so
yeah.
That's
yeah.
and I'm from Harrisonburg originally, so that's, I think
a lot of our friendships overlap that way, I'm sure. But yeah, their education license is kind of a separate certificate you get with your degree. So it was a lot of backup plans built in and just worked well for what I was trying to do.
I'm learning that a lot of people had backup plans when they went there as an art major or an artist, and I just missed that boat completely.
Well, you either had a backup plan or you found it really quickly.
Mine was Starbucks.
Yeah,
Fresh out of school.
Very thing at some point
you still have your
in all
stocks.
artists lineup, I'm sure.
My stacks?
Your stocks.
My stock?
In Starbucks?
No, not through Starbucks. I own it personally through my own broker, but let's not get into my financials right now. Thanks, Nate.
So when did you decide upon ceramics if you knew that you wanted to do teaching, but you needed a vehicle? When was that connection made?
It was somewhat of a leap of faith. I didn't get to do much art before college. I was heavy into the band scene, which is why I was totally fine with the drum conversation you had going on.
The band scene? Can you explain more about what you mean by band scene?
Oh, a lot less cool than band scene might sound.
Band kid.
That sounds cool at all.
Like marching band, something like that, or the glockenspiels, or the cymbals, bass drum.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yep.
And I think in school, typically, you kind of have to pick one or the other, band, chorus, art type stuff.
You forgot orchestra. How could you? How could you?
An orchestra.
Strings were people too. Some of us.
If you're fortunate to go to a school with a string program, them as well. They're in the band scene. But anyway, so it was just kind of a leap of faith.
We need to talk about the differences between band kids and string kids, but please tell us more about your beginnings. When did you first have a connection with clay?
Clay specifically, so with JMU's art program, you kind of go through the like drawing 1, 2D, 3D design type classes your freshman year, and then sophomore year they try to get you to, or second year, excuse me, they try to get you to narrow down a concentration. I have an aunt, Peggy Edmonds, who's decently well known in New York as a ceramic artist. So I was like, maybe there's some sort of genetic link there. So I declared my concentration, and it worked out, luckily. I actually joined classes and started going.
So we're getting a little bit of a lag there. Do you mind repeating that for our listeners?
Sure. I went to JMU my freshman year. They want you to declare a concentration within the art realm. So you can pick fibers, studio art, painting, drawing. And ceramics is one of them at JMU's program. And so I dove into those classes sophomore year once declaring that concentration, and was very fortunate that it worked out. It was a good connection with clay.
That's a completely other world to me. I'm a 2D artist, but 3D stuff just like continues to elude me.
All I know is about Gumby. He's supposedly made out of clay, I think.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle's name is Clay.
Who cares? We're not talking about your uncle.
That's similar to me. The 2D process, I don't sketch. I don't draw often. It's just not a skill set that I had or developed. So I think it's similar. A lot of 2D people don't necessarily transfer well to 3D or clay. Some can do both.
What does that planning process look like to you? Because I've seen, with movies and CGI, you'll see like 2D sketches of what something's going to look like, but then you'll have somebody make like a clay figure of it in super realistic detail of what it could look like. Do you sketch out your projects beforehand, or do you just start slinging mud?
Yeah, I definitely.
Have you been saving that joke, Nate? I think you've been saving that joke.
No.
Wow.
There's definitely a handful of clay type jokes that people usually have in their pocket ready to pull out. Yeah. But yeah, it's very much starting.
Now I'm thinking of more clay related. clay related puns.
Because I mean, this profession has been around since the beginning of time, or almost. Sorry. I'm going to correct myself and say maybe the Agrarian Revolution, 10,000, 8,000 BC, when we started living in farming communities and needing to store things.
I mean that, and I'm honestly, as soon as you start seeing various people groups with different tools, I think you start seeing bowls and types of servingware that are handmade, and anything you gather from the earth, really. I mean, you can count, you're probably using some sort of clay in that. So yeah, I would say even people are doing some sort of pottery or clay building.
So you literally have one of the oldest professions on this earth. That is amazing.
Yeah, sure.
That is cool. Because musician came a lot later.
Yeah, enrichment. What's that like? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so do you plan your stuff aside from my joke that derailed us and our?
Yeah, I plan in a way. I mean, I'm typically not sketching out a lot of planning if it's a commission. It's just verbal communication with whoever I am making.
How does this make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it for sure. Emotional goals can be a part of piece planning. But yeah, it's a lot of prototypes on the wheel or off the wheel, miniature versions maybe of whatever I'm trying to make. Sometimes if I'm just wanting to visualize what it's actually going to look like in the 3D way.
So during the process, because I like to ask this question to artists, is there a story to the clay? Is there like a narrative you're trying to describe, explain, like let people know about? Like I don't know. Like I don't know. I can see, like I you know, you can hear music and there's a story. You see paint, art, graphics. Well, how does that apply to ceramics and pottery?
I think a part of the process very much is listening to the clay. I think there are different parts where the clay is telling you something you need to hear, whether it's telling you you're pushing it too hard, like it's about to flop, or it's telling you, I don't want to be a bowl. This is going to be a plate type of deal. As far as like a narrative of the clay's life beyond that, I mean, there are connections you can make to like scripture and spirituality. And I'm sure, you know, indigenous folk and others who have used clay as a means of art have different stories to tell with it. But me personally, I think it's more of a functional aspect that I'm really listening to the clay versus some sort of narrative.
I don't know how to talk to clay, so right on. I talk to myself a lot, but I don't talk to clay as nearly as probably as much as I should. It probably helped. Yeah, it probably helped me not being up in here so much and being in the physical realm. Which I mean, that probably helps, doesn't it? Like it gets you out of your head and you're dealing with something in the physical realm.
I think it's extremely therapeutic. I mean, the repetitive nature, the circular motion of the clay, just the material itself is very forgiving. I think it can be super relaxing. And I think if you got on the wheel, you would start listening to the clay pretty quickly. It's a really fast connection. The classes I teach are only a couple hours once a week, and immediately, like the second and third class, people are hooked. It's really fun.
I'm going to let Nate say something hopefully serious, and then I'm going to ask a really ridiculous frickin' question. So Nate, go for it.
Oh dear, you're putting that in my hands. It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is.
Do you have, so after the clay is formed, after it's in the shape that you want it to be, do you have like a favorite style or a favorite finish or like glaze? Like what does the finishing process look like for you, and how much of an impact do you have on that? Or does it just kind of like, does the clay do what it wants to do?
I think you have a pretty high level of impact on the clay as far as how it looks afterwards. I mean, I typically really like smooth textures, so anything I can do to smooth out a surface or a rim or like a joint between a handle and a mug or something, I think attention to that level of detail is there for me. Whereas some people, I mean, there are tools that will put different textures in your piece for you that a lot of people have some fun with. And then glazing, I mean, I'm usually trying to create somewhat of like a colorful atmosphere, whatever it is that I'm going for in that piece. It's a lot of natural colors paired with some, bright blues or bright purples that really just, it's all a chemical reaction. So I try not to have too much of a control before I see how it comes out in the kiln. That's more just setting myself up expectation wise to not be disappointed. But I mean, it really is like Christmas morning every time you open the kiln. It's part of it's a surprise because you can only plan to a certain level before the chemicals do what they're going to do.
Sounds like pressing a record. They only have but so much control based on their, what do they call it? Splooge. Like the vinyl, when they press it, like it does different things every time.
Yeah.
All right, Phil, I'm curious.
Yeah, and there's like mold making ceramics too, which I'm sure is pretty spot on to the process.
After you make like a cast and you like pour it in.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like a prosthesis process.
I had to take a drink on this one because this is going to be real wild, and you probably get this one all the time. Has a couple ever come to you and say, we'd like to recreate this scene from Ghost in the studio?
As soon as you said a couple, it's almost every single class. I teach, mainly probably over 40-year-olds. So it comes up very regularly.
No, I want to be Patrick Swayze. It's 2020.
Don't use that line with me. Don't use that line with me. So is it a yes or a no or a hell no? You're out of my class.
What's your budget?
One or two times where I thought they were, seriously going to begin recreating some sort of scene. But there's pre-pandemic, there's like 7 other people in the room. So, I mean, that it's not super intimate. But yes, people joke about it all the time.
Have you caught someone doing it before and they weren't supposed to be doing it?
I have not, but there's no doubt in my mind that is play for some. No doubt. It's a great scene. It really is.
Did you have to watch that in ceramics class?
No.
Okay.
No, heck no. She was watching probably some, documentary on indigenous pottery from like South West America or something like that.
So the gods must be crazy.
You'd be surprised how little that part of it is in school curriculum. But no, I'm not watching Ghosts either.
Have you seen any scary movies? It is spooky season. Do you have any top? Are you a fan? If you're not, that's okay.
I'm not a fan. I'm not super well versed. I feel like I've seen some really niche ones, like Human Centipede and Shrooms, and just maybe one.
I'm out.
I haven't even seen Human Centipede yet, but I think I might be watching the precursor to it. It's called Tetsuo the Iron Man. I think I pronounced that right. But it was made in Japan in the 80s, and it has like a really new wave soundtrack to it, and it's this really weird. Oh God, how do I explain this? You'll just have to watch it on Shudder. It's on Shudder if you have that subscription. If you're interested in horror movies, I suggest you get it. But it's on there, and it's freaky.
Sounds like a different kind of freaky than the Human Centipede.
Oh no, there's somebody in the film. I don't want to spoil it for you, but somebody has a metal fetish, and they like to join their body with metal.
Gross. Anyway,
I'm always curious about what people watch and what people are into, and especially during this time of season, because this is my favorite. This is like Christmas for me. Halloween is Christmas for me.
We're both October babies, so it kind of makes sense. So when you start like a commission, how much of the process does like the customer have a say in, or is it all mostly ethereal?
I mean, they have full control. I really enjoy pieces specifically for people. So I mean, you can pick if you want to. You could pick the clay body, the size, shape, glaze, whatever you want. Or I mean, there are customers that or clients that just they're like, whatever shape you want to do, but I like these glazes that you've done before, type of deal. So it's really very much up to the individual person.
Can
yeah,
you
I like that
make a plate with my picture of my late dear cat on it for me, please? That's what I think, but no.
Do you work out of your home?
Oh my gosh.
Do you really?
I'm so sorry. That's terrible. That's terrible. I'm sorry.
I'll send you some pictures at some point. I won't talk specifically, but there have been some commissions that are definitely on the line of what I should, kitsch and craft and things.
Do you ever get like baby plates where people want to like put their hands in them and like have like a hand and footprint?
Sometimes in classes, like if I'm teaching a youth class, the kid will ask if they can do that sort of thing. But no, nobody's ever asked me to do it for them with their child.
That's what I think of when I think custom ceramics, is like the little like puck with like the baby hand and the baby foot.
That's okay. You can go. Hey, is Home Depot like the craft store for artists?
I think so. I mean, it can be. It's like if you're building your own frames for painting, if you're woodworking in any way.
We had a guest on earlier that like raved about Home Depot is the like real craft store for artists, and I was like, what? And then she started explaining it to me, and like, yeah, you can find basically all your art supplies at Home Depot, which is. Nate's agreeing with me, but I think like you have to go and really source from like different places, right? For your clay.
Well, for my clay and glazes, I would not be able to get at Home Depot. But as far as tools, basically any tools that I need, you could totally build out of Home Depot. But glazes are various chemicals that would not be found there. And clay, you don't have to dig it yourself out of the ground, which feels like kind of what you're envisioning is what I have to go through. I don't actually.
No, I was going to ask, do you or have you? Because you want a specific, clay type, because there's probably hundreds of clay types.
Right. And I have before, and I have a high level of respect for people that do that regularly. I actually use what's called reclaim for the studio that I work at. So basically, if you don't fire the clay, it can be reused at any point, no matter how dry it got, what shape it was. It can be put in various machines, or not machines. You can do it by hand.
It doesn't retain any of its memory at all.
Over time, it will wear down as far as like the clay body itself. Yeah. But the first few times it's reclaimed, it acts just like it does before. I'm not sure if former messed up bowls then turn into clay that wants to be bowls. I don't know if that's where you're going with the question, but as far as the body,
with like electrical work, like wires and like extension cords, if you like roll them up, if you lay them out flat, they still have like a cyclical like shape to them. That's what I meant.
Doing it wrong. You don't do it on your friggin' arm. Do it on your friggin' arm as a way to wrap cables. Dingus.
I was just asking if
I work in audio, or I've worked in audio before, and there's a proper way to wrap cables, and if you do it wrong, I'm going to slap you.
I see. And I understand, kind of. But no, the clay, it doesn't hold its shape from before. It's like broken down.
Does clay get mad at you? Does clay have feelings?
I have seen many people get mad at clay, and I have seen there are just days where you're off, like the clay is just not working with you.
Have you had to like talk somebody off the wheel and be like, dude, just take a break?
Oh yeah. People have, it's like a mix of just aggressive personalities with just way too high of expectations for your first pottery class. It's not as easy as everything makes it look.
So instead of talking people off the ledge, you talk people off the wheel.
For sure. But I also I find myself like talking people into keeping pieces too. They think it's a complete flop, and I'm like, no. Everything looks cool glazed.
Story of my life. No, you shouldn't delete that.
Have you ever had a piece that someone else told you that you should get rid of it, but you kept it because you really enjoyed making it?
I am in grad school for art, so yes, I have been told many times that I should throw a piece in the garbage. And
have you used Phil's favorite word? Two words. Fuck you! I'm keeping it.
Oh,
that's 4 actually.
That was 4.
That's 4. That's how much I can count to because I'm a musician. I go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yep. See, 4. Okay.
I mean, it's similar to that. I also for sure have a genetic link to hoarding, so I do have a difficult time throwing away pieces, even if there's a crack in the bottom or something. I mean, you can use clay for a lot of things. Like anything that cracks at the bottom can be a planter, no matter what it was supposed to be before. So yeah, I have a lot of semi-functional pieces lying around for sure.
Yeah, the sentiment that you're doing your master's in art, and so you have to.
Oh my God, that's so cool! We just spoke to someone who just completed their master's in art.
Yeah,
and now we're speaking to someone with, or like in the program for
currently
master's.
taking their master's. The idea of like developing a tough skin must be crazy important.
Yeah. I think you're thrown into that pretty early. I mean, my first year of undergrad, my first art class ever, I had a professor tell me my piece would look better if somebody threw up on it. And I think you just learn really quickly. Feedback is really important in a lot of aspects of life, for sure. And with art, when you're in school, after you graduate, you don't really have that level of feedback anywhere else, and that level of community as far as feedback from other artists. Definitely not establishing that as easy once you graduate. So I tried to develop a thick skin. I definitely do take some negative feedback to heart for sure. And it takes a few days to move on from that. But I think it really is a part of the process, and not everybody's going to like what you do.
How do you balance, I'm trying to figure out how to say this and not confuse everybody. So like when you're going to create a new piece, but you want to try something new, you look on Pinterest, you look on Google, you look on Tumblr, and you try to be like, this is a mood. Like he's trying to tell me to speak up. So you're looking for your moods and you're looking for a look that you want to go for. How do you balance doing your own thing and sticking to you and your style versus either keeping trendy or gathering inspiration?
I think sometimes that can get difficult with ceramics for sure, because you're competing with a lot of factory made items, like what you can get at Target or Walmart or something. So people will send you, sure of that type of thing, like a vase that they saw in Target or something like that, and ask you to recreate that type of object. So I think unless that's the type of production potter you would like to be, I think very early you kind of have to find a way to separate yourself. And for me, I think that's a huge focus on material. I think the material itself is very unique. And there are things that you can do with ceramics that you can't do with the factory made stuff, obviously, or we wouldn't need artists. Same thing with paintings and other forms of art.
Could you explain that a little more? Because you're a ceramicist, so obviously is obvious to you. Mm-hmm. But could you explain it to the difference between factory made versus homemade and why that's important?
Yeah, factory made, you can kind of tell by looking at the bottoms. Usually it's very uniform, and it's a very light piece of, maybe porcelain or something cheaper. And a lot of it's made with a mold. So, it's a lot of multiples. It has to be something that can be recreated and look like, because you're going to be, selling them in a store for the same price. So a lot of the glazing is either like printed in some form on there with like a gloss over top, or it's just not actual, it's more like what you might see in an elementary school type of glazing. Like it's very straightforward colors, not a lot of like reaction and layering. So definitely difference in the overall glaze. And then, I mean, you can tell something's handmade. It really does depend on the potter's style, but you can usually, tell that it was made by somebody's hands. Like there's some sort of imperfection, or uneven quality, or just something like, you can just tell somebody took the time to handcraft this object. And I mean, I'm not saying there's a ton wrong with factory made ceramics. I mean, it's really difficult to go through a store and see something you think is really beautiful for $8 and not want it versus paying, a ceramic artist $40 to $60 for the same thing.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes into like, what are the intentions behind the space that you're trying to create? And I think, the pieces that I make, I think the artistic quality follows them. Whereas a factory made piece, in my personal opinion, can really only be beautiful, to some visual extent.
So how do you, aside from being someone that directly financially profits from people shopping local, what is a reason that people should hire someone to hand make something versus going to the store, other than strictly supporting local? Is there like a ecological reason? Is there a any like health benefits to like using something handmade versus like factory made, or is it strictly aesthetic?
I'm not really sure about the health benefit.
That might be too highbrow. It's just something that came to me.
I would love to be able to say like there's less cancer involved in something, and honestly, there might be a higher chance with handmade. I'm not really sure. But as
we're not doctors here, so do not take any of our claims seriously. I just want to make sure.
But yeah, I mean, anytime that you're investing in an artist, whatever form it is, I really think you're making a larger investment into the community and arts themselves. And I think that that's just really important. I mean, there are all sorts of scientific studies that talk about how important art is, even developmentally. And so I think the more involved you are with the art scene, the better impact that is, like, all around, versus, supporting these larger companies who really don't need your purchase as much as what your individual purchase, means to my life and what I can do with that $25 versus what Target will do with that $18.
Literally food on the table for next week in some cases.
Yes. And here at Frame This, we support local artists and we support local art scenes. So if anyone listening, please support your local artists.
Yeah, we just had a local Richmond designer on, and it was really cool to talk about being involved in the local scene and how important it is to support locals rather than going corporate. So,
corporate sellouts.
That's not punk
of you. No, it's not. But getting a paycheck and having a 401k is cool with me. It's a nice feeling.
Are you fully substantiated by your ceramic work, or are you still under the student guise since you're going to your master's?
So I would say my main source of income at this point is definitely from ceramics and pottery, but I include the teaching in that as well. I also do have other side jobs, sometimes multiple side jobs, depending on where we're at financially. Caleb is also a freelance graphic designer, so we're living the double freelance artist life. So we both have smaller jobs on the side that, we know that our bills are paid and we can get groceries. So it takes up a majority of our time for sure. But we are still in a position where, like, he works a couple weeks at a wood shop and I work some hours with a local coffee company. So there are things to, like, support us on the side, and definitely the goal is for it to be our full source of income. But I think, the state we're in with the pandemic, gave a severe adjustment to the both of us. I mean, people have to prioritize survival, not necessarily, a cool mug at the moment. So it does get difficult, especially, when it's not the holiday season and people don't always have you in mind for commission work and stuff.
How has your art been affected by the pandemic? Have you been producing like crazy, or have you kind of like lost touch with things? Like, how has this affected you and your art?
Yeah, I think it would definitely be different if I wasn't in school, because I am still required to produce a project throughout the semester. And that was a lot of my focus. The first half of this year was trying to figure out how to get through that semester of school. It was my first one. And now I'm at a point where it's my second semester and I just don't necessarily feel as creative as I do usually. And I think that goes along with seasons. Like it's just not a creative season for me. But it is holiday season. So I am having to, I'm taking commissions and I am getting my hands dirty. But I think it's more of like a mental effect versus anything physical. I was fortunate enough. My birthday is the beginning of March. And I got myself a wheel and a kiln and set it up at home like a week before anything hit here.
Sweet.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's awesome.
That was one of my questions was, do you work from home or do you have a studio? And that,
of course she works from home. Like her garage is filled with pottery. Sorry, honey.
Takes mudroom to a whole new level.
The garage is mine. You see these shelves here? Mine.
All of your glazed and waiting for various stages of the finishing process.
Did you set your kiln up in the backyard?
We have like a warehouse type building, fortunately, on our property, and it's like part of it is wood shop stuff for Caleb, part of it is my kiln and stuff, part of it is DIY skate park. It's
really
kind of a mix of our end. It is, yeah. I'll plug the CDCC Caleb Davis Design Co. I don't know what those letters are. Skate park, yeah. It's pretty cool.
Oh, I'm just the wheels are turning now, Nate. The wheels are turning. Because I know Nate
missed out.
Other Nate mentioned that like both of you are artists, and I'm glad we got you on. But we also like to talk to your husband Caleb as well at some point.
Yeah,
about a skate park.
Okay, yeah, the skate park,
the artisanal skate park.
The skate park will come up, but mainly about his woodworking and what he does. But the skate park's pretty fucking cool. So just never
trust me, you won't have to push hard at all for the skate park to come up. Don't worry about
skate?
Physically, I can. Yes, I don't do any tricks. Other than like hopping on, shoving it, running, hopping back on, that type of trickery.
More than I can do. I have a problem like, putting one foot in front of the other. So skateboard's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't need a skateboard to have problems putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. That's what I'm here for, buddy. Left, right. No, your other right. Left.
All right.
I don't know.
How has working from home changed your flow? Has it made it difficult because it's literally, in your backyard, or has it made it easier because it's literally in your backyard?
Yeah, it's for sure made it easier because before I was having to create at the studio I teach at, which is actually an hour away from where I live.
Oof.
And I was really only going there like once a week to teach, or twice a week to teach. And that was the constraint of when I would make stuff. So it's definitely easier, like working on my own schedule. I could go throw something at midnight if I really wanted to. I think that versatility is really helpful, especially now too. I think having such a flexible schedule is really beneficial, mental health wise. And it is helpful for me productivity wise, for sure.
Because I know for me, I am currently renting out my second room, but it used to be my office, and it really helped having a mental like space to go work rather than working out of my bedroom. So I've heard from some people that it's difficult to work from home, like having a home gym versus actually going to the gym, or having a home studio. It's definitely a different strokes for different folks type situation. So I always enjoy hearing from people that like work from home and it works for them, because it's definitely the most efficient or more efficient of the two options.
Yeah, and I definitely have my own space for that. You know, I'm not throwing like in my bedroom or in other areas of my house that are for other things.
I love that it's called throwing. I'm just gonna interject. I love the thing that it's called throwing. Like, that's what you do in your profession. Mm-hmm. You throw clay.
I follow another ceramicist on Instagram, and her username is throws like a girl. And I thought it was the most clever, because she's also like a weightlifter. And it was the funniest thing in the world.
See, this is how much I know about ceramics. This is how much I know.
That's okay. I mean, come take a class at some point.
You want to head up to Gordonsville and take
No, she's in Waynesboro, right? Yeah, your studio's in Waynesboro.
I'm teaching him.
So you teach? Okay.
The studio's in Waynesboro. No, okay. She lives in Gordonsville.
Right, that's right near Harrisonburg. So I can like stay in Harrisonburg, head over there. We could have a frame this on the spot or something like that, framed on the spot or something, and I could learn how to throw clay and make a fool of myself and like come up with this really bad misshapen bowl. I swear to God, I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we leave the references to ghosts outside of the classroom, then I think it will be a super good time.
Okay, me and Nate might have to recreate it when you're not looking.
As long as I get to be Patrick Swayze.
Okay, as long as it's like a promotional shot, then it's fine. It's fine.
Yes. Oh, totally. It'll be promotional. Totally. Nate just winked at me. Ooh. I got the feels now.
So when you're doing commissions, so like with screen printing, the more you make, the cheaper it gets. With most things, the more you make of something, the cheaper it gets, because the process gets more streamlined. Do you have like a streamlining process for multiple pieces in one session? Like, how does that work? Like for a mug, would you like make all of the volumic section and then like attach the handle later in like daisy chain? I don't know how to describe that process.
Yeah. One of the important things to keep in mind with clay is that you want it to consistently dry over the whole entire piece. So whether that means like covering it and letting it dry overnight, and then the next day you come and you flip them over and let them dry so the butt is on top, that type of thing. And the same thing with handles. When you're attaching those, the handle has to be the same level of dryness as the mug. So I tried, I don't know if it streamlines time-wise, but, I'm throwing all of the main body, dry it day, come back, trim it all, make the handles, let them dry so that they're the same dryness as the mug, attach that, let it all dry very slowly, all collectively, fire it, let it cool down, glaze it all, fire it again. So it's separated into steps itself. That's not necessarily like my creative process. That's what everybody would go through for sure.
So this sounds like a pretty time-consuming process. From going to start to finish.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because you're like either waiting for the clay to dry or the kiln to cool down or something like that. And there are ways to streamline it. Like some people buy a specific clay that doesn't need to be bisque fired. You just make it, let it dry, glaze it, fire it. That comes along with its own set of difficulties. So I use the clay. Are you about to ask me what the difficulties are?
No, I was about to ask you about bisque firing versus only firing at once. Is that like a pre-firing to make the glazing easier?
So once you make the piece and let it dry, then you bisque fire it. So it's a very slow fire, like it heats up very slowly, and it's a lower temperature than the glaze fire.
Gotcha.
So once it's fired once, it's just it's very easy to work with at that point. It's not as fragile as it is when it's just the clay piece. If it's not fired, I think that's very helpful. Especially with how clumsy I am, I like to, get it in there and get it solid as fast as I can.
So now I want to ask, since you brought up the difficulties, what are the difficulties then in this process?
Well, it can basically fall apart at any time. Like you can mess it up when you're just throwing it on the wheel, or while it's drying, it could crack in a random spot. Like once you attach the handle could crack off in the kiln. The kiln could overfire, something you don't even have control of, and it gets too hot and it totally do that. There's just so many areas when you're trying through. There's just a lot of opportunity for a disaster. So that's a huge thing that you have to, adjust for.
This is
going
to be so funny. Me trying to make a clay. What's the simplest? A bowl or a plate is easier?
Plates. I think plates are actually more advanced than bowls.
Okay.
So I would say like a bowl, a handleless mug type object is probably what you'll end up with.
So let's aim for that. Phil's gonna make a handless mug object. It's probably going to be called an object after I'm done with it, because it probably won't
film the whole thing.
I know, that's your job, Nate, is you're going to film me making pottery or throwing clay while Tori walks me through it, and then I'm going to get frustrated and start throwing clay at you. Just be prepared, Nate. Just be prepared. Did you say it sounds like a good time?
Yeah, I mean, probably not the craziest thing that's ever happened in a classroom before. So, I mean, I do teach children occasionally as well. So I've seen a lot of things.
Good.
Do you have any classroom horror stories? Are you allowed to share those, or do you sign NDAs with your customers?
I do not sign NDAs. I don't know.
Ooh,
I don't know if there's been any
spill the beans.
So.
Aside from Ghost.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm kind of upset that you thought of it before I did.
Why?
Feels like I have a really funny question, and I was like, anyway, do you have any
I knew it was coming too.
Yeah. At some point, whenever you say you do ceramics, the internal clock starts ticking as to how long it takes someone to bring up Patrick Swayze and whatever.
I mean, I didn't even think of that before. I was just like, all the things I've seen in history class and all the pieces of art I've seen have all been at some, like, they're dealing with ceramics, like Rome and Greece, and their export of olive oil, all in ceramic jugs. Figurines from the Southwest, clay dioramas and scenes in like Egyptian tombs, all clay.
That's actually an interesting point. So you call all of your creations pieces like a traditional artist would. Do you ever experiment with like sculpture, or is it mostly functional pottery?
I think when I'm in a school setting, I'm more inclined to mess with the sculptural aspect and conceptual work. In my practice, it is mostly functional. And I call them pieces because I do think they're individual art pieces. I'm not super into the craft versus art debate, and it doesn't really bother me.
Is that
wherever
that's
I'm
a debate?
placed.
I had no idea that was a conversation that happened.
I'm just thinking, like, who is a famous ceramicist or like famous person that worked with clay and made sculptures? I'm trying to like go through art class here. I'm just trying to, I don't know. Can you educate me and us and our listeners?
Totally.
on the like.
I would say specifically.
Yeah, no, go.
Well,
go.
I mean, yeah.
Go.
We could go through, but I think in school a lot, clay is kind of more towards the craft studies programs and, the just general craft versus fine art. So I think you don't really get a big background in art classes on people who work with clay. We could talk about some ceramic artists.
Yeah, who are some potters that you look up to?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
who's the most famous ceramicist that's ever lived?
That's ever lived? I mean, I don't know. I think there are specific famous ceramic artists that are like popular social media wise now, but as far as ceramic artists that ever live, let me see. Let me do a quick Google and let you know which one I've heard of.
Or like clay. Who's done the most with clay that's made an impact in the art world?
So most famous ceramic artist impact art world. That's what I Googled.
Nate's like, Phil, where the fuck are you going with this?
There is a lot of them, actually. I haven't heard of any of these people, though, so I don't actually feel comfortable educating anybody on any of them.
Fair enough. People work with clay.
I mean, I can talk about... Wait, what?
I was like, people work with clay, and they really do awesome things. I'm summarizing the whole history of ceramics and clay and throwing things.
This one's really old.
This one's really old. People do crazy cool things with clay, so just buy it.
Well, I mean, I would really suggest like YouTubing throwing videos, pottery throwing videos, maybe.
Boom, Nate, we've done it. Social media post, throwing shit. That's what we're gonna put as like one of our posts. We'll do like videos. Are they like cathartic watching these people do it? Is it like, yeah, okay? Because I've been really anxious recently, and I need something to like. So yeah, maybe throw in some clay.
Yeah, I'll send some your way. I think it's really beneficial to learn the process, but it's also, or even people just like playing with clay on the wheel, like making patterns as it spins. Is totally mesmerizing. I think you should spend, a couple hours doing a little deep dive into YouTube throwing videos.
Like, I'm just like trying to like understand, like, I'm not to say that like this is a thing with children, but like as a child, you play with clay and you never think that you can make a profession and a whole life around just making things with clay. Like, I think that's wild and crazy and cool. Cause like, I don't know. Yeah, I just remember playing with clay and then that's it.
You almost kind of take it for granted because you can buy a mug at Walmart.
That's
but like painting is always seen as something that's like handmade.
Do you guys have a secret society of ceramicists and potters? Because there's a hat world out there that we know nothing about, that we had a guest on explain to us. But is there like a secret society of like...
There's like grudges and drama and like people don't talk to other people because they stole information from so-and-so and like it's wild.
Are you guys just like, we're all cool? Or do you guys like go after like the painters and like,
You could say that they have dirt on them.
I mean, I don't know.
You could say, yes, you could say. Or do you like, do you throw your clay at people's artwork and go, we're the real artists?
I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily the direction you wanted this to go, but there was a brief period like a couple of years ago where there were some, sexual assault accusations and cases within the ceramics community.
Oof.
Like decently prominent figures. And so different other prominent figures would come out and share their stories. So there's that kind of drama.
It not only affected the world of Hollywood, it affected the Me Too movement. It was everywhere. It affected everything.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it was shortly after that time as well. I think it was important for all communities to kind of inspect what they've got going on in relationship to that.
So there are no potters gangs.
Really,
there's like no potter gang out there.
Hogwarts isn't real, Phil.
I feel like there are all sorts of gangs out there. There's
art gangs,
I just might not
specifically
be a part
art
of
gangs, roving bands of art gangs.
There's no way there's not.
Do you guys just like carry your wheels with you or something, or how does that work?
I mean, it's decently heavy, but there's an artist that goes to my grad school that brought their wheel with them to residency and like set it up in their little dorm room. So you totally can. It can be anything can be portable if you are strong enough.
Ooh. Do people get possessive over their potter's wheels? Do you have like a super like connection with your potter's wheel? It's like you can't like no one else can touch this. Like if you touch my wheel, I'm going to kill you.
I mean, I think personally as a teacher, I can't be that way because there are people using my wheel all the time. But there are students that are like, I sat at this wheel, class number 1. I'm sitting here until the end.
Are these children or are these adults?
It's everybody.
Oh my god,
that's hilarious.
Oh my god.
Start assigning seats, I guess.
Anything you can do, like to set up a successful environment for yourself, I am for. So if you need to sit in that wheel to feel like you're going to have a better time in class, that's fine with me.
Because like,
are there?
No, Nate, continue. Go for it.
I know. Are there like settings you can adjust on the wheel? So like, can you customize it to your current like throwing style?
Yeah.
Like resistance on the wheel and pedal distance and whatnot.
Yeah, if you're using a pedal, the pedal is kind of like loose. You could really move that all over. Some people put wood blocks underneath to make it higher. A large amount of the wheels, the pedal, like the more you press down, the faster it goes. So that level of customization, you can also switch the direction the wheel turns. That's usually for like left-handed versus right-handed.
What effect does that have on someone that's using it as a single-handed person? So like if you're just right-handed, would changing the direction, even though you're still using your right hand, have an effect on the process?
Yeah, I think because, the side of the piece that you're working on, the way the wheel turns, if it was turning the other way, that would be a different kind of pressure on the piece. So it would have a different result.
That's really cool.
There are different tools that you can make to assist you if you needed additional hand type structures there on the clay. So you really, you can use either hand. You also don't necessarily need hands to throw. That's another thing to look into if you're interested.
Can people throw with their
there's
feet?
All sorts. I'm more specifically talking about people who might not have both hands or hands at all.
Amputees and stuff.
Yeah, there are still potters that throw in that way.
That's really cool.
But yeah, I'm sure there are people that use their feet, no doubt.
Weirdos. I don't know. But all through this whole conversation, all I can think about is the scene in Full Metal Jacket where the guy's like talking about his gun, like this is my gun. But instead, this is my potter's wheel. There are many like it, but this is mine. If you ever see that movie, yeah, you'll get it. But I digress. It's an interesting scene.
Yeah, the idea of being comfortable in your own workspace is always fascinating to me because the way that your mind approaches creative work and the place that it's in when it sets about doing its creative work is really intriguing. And do you so as a student, you have to put out a certain number of pieces for your class, and then you also have your teaching, so you have to do the prep work for that. Do you I forget who it was. I think it was so the guy that made the music for Star Wars, even if he didn't
John Williams.
I wasn't going to go that nerdy. I know it's John Williams.
Dude, no, you have to say John Williams. You don't
John Williams,
the guy that wrote the music for Star Wars.
Jerry Seinfeld. That guy. He even if he wasn't feeling super like motivated or inspired, he still like scheduled time for himself to create music, and then at least did his part to approach the subject, even if it didn't actually even if nothing actually ever like came of it. Do you do that in your own life, or do you have to like, oh, I'm feeling motivated, I'm going to go throw?
I think it is a balance of that. I mean, there are times where I do want to, respect the days that I'm really not feeling like creating something. But I do know that there are days where I don't feel like doing it. And once I start, it completely shifts my mood to a more positive place. So I, try to consider that as well. I am learning not to put a ton of pressure on myself when I'm in creative environments. And I think that results in a lot of sessions that, have no goals. It's just
could you unpack that a little bit?
So like going into the studio, not thinking I have a commission for 10 mugs, so I need to, sit down and throw at least 18 of them, so that at least 10 of them make it all the way through.
That's a lot.
But then there are some times, I know, I leave a lot of margin for error.
But I know that's good though. Yeah, that's good though. I mean, you want to.
That was the question I couldn't remember.
Since clay, it sounds like since clay is such a delicate object, and there's points in the the whole process, make or break. Like you can be super excited about this one thing, and you fire it, and it just cracks, and you're just like, oh well. Start again.
My psyche.
Yeah, and I think that's easy to do with smaller pieces like mugs or whatever. There's no harm in having an extra mug in the batch if more than 10 of them survive or whatever. But there are larger pieces like, larger planters where I quite literally can't afford to make more than just the one. So that's a more environment.
Do you include so when you're pricing those, do you include like a markup for simply the materials for waste?
That I would say that's pricing is something I take a great deal of care in. I try to keep my pieces as accessible as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So my margin of profits is actually relatively low. There's a really good pottery company, East Fork Pottery. They have this really nice breakdown. It's like a picture with a plate that they've made. Yeah, they charge $42 for. Yeah. And it breaks down, this is the pay, this is to pay our employee, like this is this. And I just try not to mark up, more than I need. I'll get, what I think I deserve for the time that I put into this piece. And I typically get back what I have, paid to get the material. But other than that, I try to keep it pretty low and accessible.
So you were talking earlier about reclaiming clay. At what process at what stage in the creation process do you know that something needs to be reclaimed? And if you're working for someone, is it possible to like recoup some of your material cost if it's going to be like a piece that isn't up to your standard?
Yeah, if something goes wrong with the piece before it's fired at all, you can reclaim that at any point. You can just toss it in the bucket. If it's too dry, add some water, and it'll eventually mush back down to, a muddy form. After it's fired, that's a different story. That would have to be reused in a different way. But yeah, knowing a piece needs to be reclaimed. I mean, for me, because I am a professional potter, I am a bit more specific with that. As far as if the piece doesn't look great on the wheel, I'm just going to take it off and chuck it in the reclaim bucket right then. But I do get to the point where like overnight, one of my handles cracked off on a piece I really enjoyed, but you can't put a handle on once it's dried. So that would also go in the reclaim bucket.
Makes me sad.
I mean, for me, that's not a sad part of the process. The clay that I get is from the studio. So it's like everybody's mess ups. And I think there's something kind of redemptive in making new pieces out of those mistakes. So I try to view it in that way.
That's cool. Now I'm trying to like anthropomorphize the reclaimed clay bucket. And like, how does that clay feel?
All I can think of is Toy Story 4 with the spork.
Forky?
Forky,
yeah.
Trash. You're not trash. You're a toy.
Okay. That's a pretty good comparison.
That is actually pretty good, yeah.
I can do comparisons sometimes.
You can do. I mean, Nate, you're a smart guy at times. Just not when it comes to sports. We're not going to talk about sports.
I'm not allowed to talk about sports.
He's not allowed to talk about sports in this podcast. He's screwed himself over way too many times.
Twice.
Twice. Jeez.
Do you have any pieces of advice for someone looking to get into the ceramics world that you would like to share with the audience? So should a young potter be
Yeah.
Do you have any advices for Phil? Because he's just getting started.
Yeah, give me some advice.
He's about to embark on his brand new life as a
throwing in clay and I don't know what else.
Yeah, my experience with beginning potters, I mean, I teach an all levels throwing class. So at any stage in your clay journey is what I've seen. And I've seen all people be successful at pottery in a very short amount of time, honestly. So I would say, one, give yourself time for that learning curve. It's muscles that you are not used to using, like your fingers and your forearms and
I've been using those since 4th grade.
We play bass.
Well, so some
I
of you
studied the cello
than others,
and that's all like bow arms all up here. But yeah. Okay, so give myself time.
I mean,
it's different muscles.
Like, it's muscle memory. So let those build up a little bit, and I guarantee, like, one day, eventually, something will just click for you. There's a step in the process you thought was really hard, or you figured out a way around that step because that's possible as well. I think anybody can do it, and I've seen a lot of people at various life stages learn this skill that they didn't think was possible. So be patient with yourself. But also don't be worried about it, because even if you mess up, it can be somebody's reclaim. So there's redemption involved.
Trash.
I think you guys should put googly eyes on your reclaim bucket.
I will. I'll do it this week when I'm in there.
Just call it Phil.
No, Forky.
No, it's got to be. You can't name it for. No, that's copyright infringement. Disney will be after your ass.
Which one of you is Randy Marsh?
Yeah, which one? Reclaim. Randy the Reclaim Bucket.
There you go. So, do you have any? Okay. This is one of my personal favorites.
But I feel I should go to like the kids class. I should sign myself up for like the kids class.
And sit there like Happy Madison.
And like in pottery, and then be like with the kids, be like, "You're doing great, man. How am I doing?" And it's just like this misshapen creature.
Hey, if that's what you need to do to set yourself up for success, then we can make it happen.
There you go.
You're totally serious about me?
She's being very serious.
You're totally cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to find the other children to take the class with.
Okay, so it's just as you said, it's a one-on-one right now at the studio.
Well, no. I just mean I'm not gonna. I wouldn't bring you in to one of my actual youth classes, just to throw that out for any parents that might be listening. But if you established your own class with 3 other kids, that we have a full roster.
You yourself couldn't join a youth class, but if you had friends that were youths that you would like to bring with you, you could do that.
Well, I'm 28 years old. I really don't have any friends under the age of, I don't know.
30.
30, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So back to reality.
I don't know. I'm just trying to like think of some crazy situation I could put myself in where I just bomb and everyone just gets a good laugh at home. or whoever's watching this.
And then I have to play cleanup.
You don't have to play cleanup. I have to play cleanup.
So, do you
actually? I feel like I would have to play cleanup if it was
in this particular situation? Yes, emotional cleanup. That's on me.
There you go, Nate. Yep, emotional cleanup.
So, do you have any pieces of advice you hear in your industry, or pieces of advice you yourself were told that turned out to be not good?
Shite. That were complete shite.
I don't know. I go back and forth on this a lot. But I think people really put a lot of pressure on, as soon as you're an artist, you need to figure out your style. You need to figure out what makes you unique, and you need to separate yourself from everybody else. And I think eventually that might be important. But I think you do need to leave space for the process of, finding what you enjoy and really figuring out that style. And I mean, you're a unique human. So eventually, unless you're purposely copying other people, your uniqueness is going to come out of your work. So I think I'm still in that stage. I mean, I've been doing pottery for 6 years, and I would still say I'm developing my artistic style. And I'm a big fan of leaving room for that in your practice.
That's actually really good advice. That wasn't shite. That was good advice.
Well, no, that was her recap of bad advice she's heard.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, okay. I was like...
She turned it around in...
Got it.
Oh, yeah.
The advice that she's heard was develop your own style, and she says that's bad advice because your style will eventually come out if you're working on it as an individualistic human being.
More so, like, that timeline. I just don't think, like, you need to put that pressure on yourself.
Pressure on it.
Immediately. I don't think that's an important first step unless that, happens for you. I think it's something that you can work on and develop and change and, change your mind on, and, at any step in the process, really.
So this is going to be a little bit long-winded. I read this book. People always ask me, so I read a lot. And people always ask me, like, what book it's like, I need a new book to read. What should I read? And invariably it's a tie between two books, both by the same guy. One is Deep Work, and one is So Good They Can't Ignore You, both by Cal Newport. My favorite of the two, I think, is So Good They Can't Ignore You, because he talks a lot about how to be super unique and create your own field rather than competing in an oversaturated space.
I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your take on style playing a role in being marketable as somebody in, let's say, like photography or ceramics or, watercolor, wine and watercolor paintings, like, versus creating your own style? Where do you find the balance in that?
So, like, you mean like branching off of somebody else's style versus creating your own unique?
Yeah. So, like, how do you create your own path as a ceramicist versus, like, being so off the wall that you're very unique?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do you find the balance?
I just really try. Yeah, I try to be true to myself and true to the material. So, what are my specific intentions of making this piece? Is it to make money, which is no, very rarely, or is it to, give somebody a positive interaction with a piece of art, typically made for them? I think you should always be doing, self-evaluations of your intentions. And I think that's a great way to kind of keep the balance that you desire, is to just really, sit down with yourself. What are your goals? Why do you have these goals? What does success mean to you? Brainstorming various ways to achieve that. And then, doing what's true to you and the type of art that you're trying to make.
Cool.
That's just some great advice. I just like hearing great advice from other artists, because I always think too much when I start doing stuff. I always overthink things. And I get bogged down by that. And for me, it's just like how to figure out like how to tell myself, okay, this was good, and then this was bad. But then not think that stuff was good was also bad. Like how do you separate that?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think this like age that's really heavy on social media actually makes that a little bit more difficult, because you put something out there, you know, hoping to get either like a positive reaction or some sort of feedback.
Instant gratification.
Yeah.
It's killing us.
And I mean, you can let yourself down in that way.
It's killing me
a lot.
It's killing me, but yeah. Getting old sucks.
Life advice: don't get old.
Yeah. Stay a kid forever. I mean, that's what my parents say.
Do you have any parting words, Phil? I'd like to be respectful of your time, Tori, and we need to do a preparation for the next guy.
I don't have anything, but Tori, thank you for coming on and being a part of this journey with us.
I knew nothing about ceramics going into this, so like a lot of my questions were like super amorphous, and
I learned a lot today about ceramics and pottery.
Before this, we were talking about like, what are we going to talk about? And I was like, I don't know, just ask her about pottery, and then Daisy chained that, and it was really cool learning about the intricacies of that and what it's like to start and finish a project for someone that has no idea what they're talking about.
Yep. And now I've signed myself up for a pottery class.
Yeah. That was my only goal. Go do it. Was just to get another student.
We'll be in touch.
This is her soft pitch.
Oh, I know. We'll be in touch. But I've from the beginning, I've always wanted to like have one of these artists that come on here like teach us how to do something or walk us through how to do something and see how it turns out. Because I'm
100%. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. Because I'm a musician and I have no talent when it comes to graphic art.
So for the next guy, do I get to tattoo you?
Frick no, you're not tattooing me, Nate.
We're talking to a tattoo artist from upstate New York, and you see, you get to do the pottery class. I get to buzz your knee.
No, no, you don't. We can get matching tattoos. We can get like unicorns or something. That'd be fun. Or like your face on me and then my face on you.
I'd rather get the unicorn.
Ouch. That hurts. That really hurts. Tori, thank you
This has been a lot of fun.
so much for coming on.
I apologize for our scatterbrained.
Because I knew nothing about ceramics, but now I know terminology, the process. I freaking learned something today, and I hope all our listeners did too. This has been Frame This Podcast. Stay hungry, stay safe, and most importantly, Nate,
stay creative.
Stay creative. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.